So this is Vlogmas. Hello, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Cheryl Lindsay. I'm a pastor and teacher, and I am delighted to share with you during this Vlogmas 2019, my Advent series of Vlogmas. Part of that has been showing you the setup of my prayer journal. Those of you who've seen a few of my videos will recognize this book that I have set up specifically for my prayer journal. In this video, I'm going to focus on this 2-page spread I've been talking about. I'm going to set this up later, and now is the time. I do have a little cheat sheet where I've done some pre-work, so hopefully this will not be too long and chatty, but I've done some pre-work in terms of looking up scriptures and thinking about what I want to include on this page. What I have not really done is sort of laid out where I want things. I know I want to have definition of discover on the page, and they're basically the definitions that I looked at, and I got these from Merriam-Webster online, I believe. It's to make known or visible, in other words, exposed, to obtain sight or knowledge of for the first time, find, and find out. Those are the definitions. So those will go prominently on the page, and I also have a couple of scripture passages that are speaking to me and some quotes. So I have to figure out where, and I'll have my prayer of the year. One of the things I do with and I think maybe I will actually put that down first. One of the things that I like to do with my word of the year is turn it into a prayer, almost like my prayer for the year. It certainly is related to my word and how it manifests in the year for me, and it remains consistent. One year, I think I actually did a prayer each month. But I think having one for the year so far is my plan. And I'm just copying this down. So I actually thought about this before. And because I'm using this marker, it is really going to take up a lot of space on this page. But I think that's appropriate for prayer in my prayer journal. Now, I will then use other pens, so I won't use this marker for anything else. So because I was talking and writing, I actually ended up altering the prayer slightly. So my initial, what I was planning to write, open the eyes of my heart, Lord, expand my vision, and give me a discerning spirit, discerning and discovering spirit, which I left out, and put me in the practice of finding what is before my very eyes and giving you glory for the sight. What I ended up writing, and I'm actually going to add the discovering, because I think that discovering piece is important. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord, expand my vision, and give me a discerning spirit, discerning and discovering spirit. Put me in the practice of finding what is before me and your glory manifested. All right. So that's that. And now I'm going to fill in with, I think, scripture, one of my favorite scriptures. And I think I'm going to, I still want this to be, I do want some things to really stand out. So this is a very important scripture to me from Isaiah 43. It is part of my call story when I first accepted my call to ministry. I had been looking for signs. And one of the signs, man, oh man, I'm going to have to do something with this. One of the signs was hearing the scripture. And it was actually Isaiah 16 through 20, but particularly these words, because I was really questioning I was questioning whether I was fit to do the work of ministry, whether I didn't feel I was holy enough, that I knew enough, and all these things, and that I wasn't outfitted and equipped to do ministry. And this scripture during a watch night service, New Year's Eve service, in the African American tradition, where you ring in the new, you say goodbye to the old year, and you anticipate what's to come through the watch night service, in many ways as a homage and a remembrance of what our enslaved ancestors did as they waited to hear the news of their freedom. You do that in worship. And so my pastor was preaching on this text, and this text is about newness, but it's also about God's provision and God's strength and God carrying you through. And so this scripture speaks to me about that, about God doing a new thing, but this key part, now it springs forth, do you not perceive it? That whole, I'm doing it, it's happening. Do you see it? And that's all about what Discover is all about. I messed up a little bit here, but God's grace is sufficient, so I am not going to go back and change a thing here. A quote that I came across that I like: attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity. I think attention is very important in terms of discover and discovery. And so that idea of that tying into generosity, first of all, that was something I hadn't thought of before, not at least not in those terms. And so that's a discovery in and of itself. And so I thought that would also be good on this page. So you see how this page shapes up. I need now to make sure I have room for the scripture practice. I do have another quote that, and I also have to put the definitions. So I think the definitions might go there, actually. And I think the definitions, because they are, I mean, they're not exactly rocket science, right? The definitions are pretty straightforward. So I'm just going to put them here. So do you have a word? Do you choose a word for the year? And how do you reinforce it in your daily life? So for me, this is the first part of working this word of the year, because I really consider it something that I work on throughout the year to incorporate it in my life. And I'm actually, the last one is find out. I think that's almost redundant, so I don't think that's necessary. I want to do a little bit of, I don't know, separating here or something. Not sure I'm loving that, but just so visually that I can see there's something different. Another scripture that I want to include is from Jeremiah. I think I'll put it up here. Call to me, and I will answer. Obviously, this is God talking. And reveal to you wondrous secrets. This is sort of the unknown becoming known, that aspect of discovery that you haven't known. And that comes from Jeremiah 33:3. That's Common English Bible. And all of these scripture passages are coming from the Common English Bible. That's a particular translation. I'm flipping this page just so you can see, for those of you who might be curious in terms of how what I'm doing here is it intruding on the next page. There is some ghosting, there's no bleeding, and because this is a reference page, but it's not a page where there's nothing new here. This is a reference page. It's static. It is the same in multiple places for me. That little bit of ghosting does not bother me a bit. So, I may actually kind of want this now. This one I have a feeling is going to do a lot more, but this is a passage about prayer that is really important to me, and I think such a powerful scripture that I really do want it to stand out as well. I think of it as ask, seek not, seek. This version has search. The first version, and probably the one I read it in the most, the New Revised Standard, has seek, but search, seek, they both work for me. But those three words, if you put them together, the initials, it's ask. Go back to ask. Ask, search or seek, and knock. And it's all about asking God, seeking God, searching for God, and knocking on doors. And for me, that really speaks of discovery. And it's such a powerful promise. That it's from Matthew 7, verses 7 and 8. And Jesus is teaching them, his disciples, about prayer. Now, it's not saying you're going to get everything. Knox. Mess that one up too. This is the problem with taping these things. I'm beginning to understand, and I'm going on a tangent here, but I'm beginning to understand why so many folks will do this not in real time, but they'll do the recording of it and then walk you through and show you, but then walk you through it afterwards, because it's a little distracting to walk you through it as you're doing it. And that's why I keep making these mistakes. The mistakes, particularly in this prayer journal, which is only for me, other than me sharing it with you, no one else is looking at this, again, do not bother me tremendously. The passage, though, is ask and you will receive. Search and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives. Whoever seeks finds. And to everyone who knocks, the door is open. Again, discovering. All right, let me see what else. I do have some other quotes here, but I think I have an extensive quote from and a scripture passage. Now, I could just write them using, and this is what I think I'm going to do. I have a passage from a book that I was reading, I've been reading this past year, called The Practice of Finding by Holly Whitcomb. It's a really good book, and I read it devotionally, so I read like a couple, maybe a page at a time, and I don't necessarily read it every day. But it really is talking about the practice of finding, and I think that's part in my spirit, why my spirit has led me to choosing the word discover for my word for the year next year, because I've really been reflecting on this idea of discovering what's already around me, and doing this as a discipline, as a regular practice, versus sort of striving. You know, the striving is very different from discovering or finding. And striving, you tend to end up being frustrated, whereas in finding, you end up really feeling the blessings of what is already there. So it's really a different mindset. And there we go. So anyway, the practice of finding, this is the quote, often takes our breath away and brings tears to our eyes. For through these precious and unforeseen aha moments, we discover that the gift we receive is more cherished than the one we've been seeking. And that's Holly Whitcomb. So I'm going to write that down and come back to you. Her book is one that I would recommend, The Practice of Finding by Holly Whitcomb. I want to leave some space, but I do have one other passage of scripture that I want to include here. So I'm going to, this space here, it's not a lot, but I could put something here at a later point, as well as this space. I'm going to use this space for this last passage. So this is from 1 Corinthians 13th chapter, the 12th verse that I have just written there. Now we see a reflection in a mirror, that we will see face to face. Now I know partially, but then I will know completely, the same way that I have been completely known. And that's the Apostle Paul writing to the church at Corinth. So you see how this has taken shape. Again, I have space here, I have space here, and I have a little space here. If I don't fill those spaces up, that's fine too. One of the things that I like to do is have some empty space. I like to leave some space for my eyes to just, I like white space, in other words. So every little space doesn't have to be taken up. But that is my word of the year spread in my prayer journal. And that page is now finally complete. I hope you've enjoyed this video. And if you have, you can like it, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. Again, Sharon, do you have a word for the year? If you want to share what your word is and how you'll be amplifying it or reflecting on it and using it in your day-to-day life to make an impact on your life in the coming year. I'd love to hear about it. Until the next time I see you, I pray that the light of Christ will shine in you and through you through this Advent season. Until next time, be blessed.